The whole time I was playing through Psychonauts 2, the main thought that really kept running through my mind is, wow, this is just like the first Psychonauts, and I mean that in the best way possible. That isn't to say that there aren't any changes or updates to the gameplay or that certain things haven't been tightened up, but the core experience of what the first Psychonauts was really feels like it was preserved, which is fantastic. It's not without its faults, but I couldn't help but love every moment I spent playing it. Full disclosure, I got the chance to play this game early thanks to a code sent over from Xbox. I played it specifically on the Xbox Series X and Series S. I took time between them, and that is what has informed my gameplay experience. The game is also available on Xbox One, PS4, and PC. I have not done a game review in quite some time. It's something that I actually kind of missed, so if you enjoyed this video, please make sure to like, subscribe, and even share it if you can. It would mean a lot to me. If you never played the original game or haven't really looked that much into this one, Psychonauts is basically a 3D platformer that also has some combat elements, a little bit of puzzle solving. It's mostly really focused on exploration and its storytelling. I know that describes a lot of 3D platformers, but what really set Psychonauts apart was its bizarre world and strange cast of characters, and really what it is, it feels a lot like a late 90s, early 2000s Nickelodeon or Cartoon Network cartoon. Like, it has that type of storytelling and vibe, which having this one come out 16 years later makes it not only super nostalgic for specifically a new Psychonauts game, but really just feels nostalgic for that era of cartoons, which is why I think it hits a little heavier for certain people. Psychonauts 2 is a direct continuation of the events from the first game, as well as the mid-quill VR game they released, Rhombus of Ruin, but you don't have to play those to really get into this one. It does do a pretty good job of offering a little optional video you can watch that walks through the events of both games. And while there are definitely some jokes and references that you'll appreciate a lot more if you do play the first two games, the majority of the storytelling and everything in 2 stands perfectly fine on its own, and it catches you up to speed on all the important bits. I don't really want to go in depth in the plot and let you all experience that for yourselves, and so the vast majority of the gameplay in this video is pulled from just the first few hours, leaving the rest to be a nice surprise. The gameplay loop and story flow of 2 is very similar to the first one, in which you are swapping between either playing in the real world or exploring different characters' minds in astral projection. The real world is a non-linear kind of space that you can explore, use different powers to find different nooks and crannies, and find different collectibles or accomplish side quests in order to not only complete more of the game, but improve Raz's power. Where a lot of the real story development comes from, though, is all the times that you have to dive into different characters' minds in order to help them deal with emotional trauma. And these areas play out much more like a traditional platforming level design, where you have a starting point and endpoint you need to reach, although some areas do take on a bit of a more unique approach to this. This is, I think, one of the really big shining points of this game, is that every world you explore is very different. They all have their own personalities, they all have some unique mechanics you have to deal with. No two people's minds really end up playing the exact same, which is a really cool concept. Even though your breadth of abilities doesn't change that much throughout the course of the game, every new area you explore feels like a bit of a new gameplay mechanic you have to deal with, which keeps the gameplay feeling fresh. Like in the real world, while there is a sort of final goal and destination and boss you want to beat in some of these worlds, there are also a bunch of collectibles, many of which are returning from the past game, like figments, emotional baggage, as well as some new collectibles you can pick up, for instance, Half a Mind, which is a way for you to increase your max health. Exploration is, I think, really the main heart of Psychonauts 2's gameplay. Yes, there's 3D platforming and challenges you have to overcome to using that, and there are combat segments where you fight enemies, but it really is the exploration where you end up soaking most of your time. All progression is handled via exploration. You don't level up or anything from fighting enemies. Instead, it's all from finding all the various collectibles littered in both the real world and in people's minds, and so it really promotes this player behavior of wanting to poke and prod at every nook and cranny and make sure that, well, maybe let's not continue down this pathway. There might be something over on this side area here that unlocks something. I gotta check that out. The level design, by the way, does a fantastic job of giving you a pretty good idea of where you want to poke and prod and explore more. While there were a couple secrets and things that I did miss until having to go back and backtrack, a lot of the stuff is telegraphed just the right way to where it's maybe not super obvious, but there's that little hint that says, hey, wait, maybe walk over here for a second. Just look over what's in here. 3D platforming for the most part in the game is excellent. It's that kind of right balance to where, yes, you do have to be a little more careful with your timing and figure stuff out, judge distances, all that good stuff, but it's never frustrating to the point of making you want to quit. There are a couple things where if you're trying to go for 100% completion where, getting certain figments or certain collectibles requires maybe a little more patience, and sometimes isn't as obvious what you're supposed to do and how you're supposed to get there. But none of these situations ever pushed me to the point of not having fun with the game. You know, at most I got frustrated for a couple minutes and then finally did it, or I'd give up, move on, backtrack later on, try again, and somehow do it on my first try. And then there's the combat, which honestly is the weakest part of the game. I don't think it's bad, it's just not the reason why you want to play Psychonauts. It's definitely the sort of situation where the combat gets the job done, and that's about it. That being said, if you played the first Psychonauts, where again, combat wasn't super good, Psychonauts 2 does feel a little more tightened up and better in comparison. There are weaker enemies that you can just smash and blast your way through, while there are stronger enemies that require a little bit more of a puzzle approach, where you have to make use of the right powers in the right order, figure out how to expose their weaknesses, and then take them down. Figuring out which psychic powers you need to use to defeat enemies the first time you encounter them is a really rewarding feeling and experience, but once you have figured that out, it really just becomes a repetition of, once again, okay, here's all the enemies I have to fight, kill the weak guys, use these moves to take out the bigger ones. It just doesn't feel all that interesting as much as it is, okay, cool, I figured out the solution, now I just have to keep doing that solution again and again and again. In its defense, combat is sporadic enough that you don't really ever get enough time to become super tired of it, because the game is, again, much more focused on that platforming and exploration aspect, with combat just popping up every now and again. Also, while regular enemies can feel a little repetitive, each of the game's boss fights do have their own little unique mechanics and spins and kind of weird things that happen that make them feel much more rewarding and interesting. One way that combat is a little mixed up in this one is the addition of a new feature in the game called badges. You can buy badges and equip up to 3 of them, which customize your powers in different ways. Some of these are purely cosmetic, where it's like, hey, now you have rainbow fists, that's cool, but others do things like add secondary effects to some of your powers, change how some of them work, some of them even completely change the fundamental effect of the power. This gives you a little more way to customize your particular playstyle if you find yourself using certain powers more often than others. I will admit, personally, I didn't really invest in a lot of these and instead favored a lot of the badges that just gave flat passive benefits. For instance, pulling items from farther away, increasing your punch damage, or eventually just getting the ones that double how fast you get the game's currency, Titanium, because I wanted to buy all the things and it made it a lot easier. Gameplay mechanics are all well and good, but honestly where this game really truly shines is its characters and its storytelling. The cast of bizarre characters, all with very strong personalities, are definitely the thing that stood out the most to me in my experience. I fell in love with basically every character I interacted with. Some of them completely steal the show during their own cutscenes, and really, if I have any major complaint in this regard, it's just the fact that I wish some of them had a little more screen time. There are a few characters that are introduced that have a couple funny little lines here, you can talk to them and interact a little more, but beyond that, don't really add much to the plot and don't get much screen time past that, while other characters have plenty of scenes to really show off some of their quirkier or more hilarious habits. Meanwhile, the overarching story itself, I really liked. Again, I'm not really going to get into the specifics, but the kind of general tone of it and everything, it's very positive, it deals a lot with emotional connections and getting over certain emotional traumas, and in the end, it drives home and sticks the landing for the heartwarming and family-friendly message it's trying to tell. Overall, I absolutely enjoyed my time with Psychonauts, and I think that's actually one of the big strengths that it has as well, is its sense of pacing. It took me about 12 hours to finish the main story of the game while also taking some time running around doing a little completionism, and even going back afterwards to try and backtrack and get more stuff, I'm hitting the 15-hour mark and I'm still missing a couple things. It works out really well where I think if your main goal is you just want to burst through the game and enjoy the storyline and call it a day, you can do that in 8 to 10 hours, or if you really want to poke and prod and explore, there is a meatier game there for you that you don't have to engage with, but I absolutely had a ton of fun doing so. During my playtime, I did also notice a couple parts that could maybe just use a little bit more polish and tightening up. For instance, there were occasions where I could hear characters speaking clearly even though they were in a completely separate room from me, and sometimes during dialogue there would be this odd buffering loading moment where I was going to pick more dialogue options, but then the camera just stalls for a bit. Nothing game-breakingly bad, but they did stand out as odd moments here and there. Considering how long it's been since the first game came out and how many delays this one went through, I really do feel like this game absolutely delivered on the anticipation it had built up. It's certainly a more cult classic style of game, which was the same issue the first one ran into, but if you're at all a fan of 3D platformers, if you enjoy exploration and collectibles, it's an excellent pickup. I highly recommend checking it out. And if you have Game Pass, just download it, like right now. It's on there, it's a great game. Even if you're not completely sold on it, it's worth at least checking out. Trust me, it's excellent.